Hello guys, once again welcome back to another Android application development tutorial. In this video we are going to learn about what are the lifecycle callbacks methods of an activity. During the lifecycle of an activity, the activity going through different states, and there are some certain lifecycle callbacks methods that indicate these lifecycle changes. So here I create a simple presentation that give you the basic concepts of what are the life cycle callbacks and when these callbacks are invoked by the system. So we can start the presentation. Over the course of its lifetime, an activity goes through a number of states. The activity class provides a number of callbacks that allow the activity to know that a state has changed. Within the lifecycle callback methods, you can declare how your activity behaves when the user leaves and re-enters the activity. Each activity callback methods allow you to perform specific work that's appropriate to a given change of state. Good implementation of the lifecycle callback can help your app to avoid the following situations. First one, crashing if the user receives a phone call or switches to another app while using your app. Consuming valuable system resources when the user is not actively using it. Losing the user progress if they leave your app and return to it at a later time. Crashing or losing the user's progress when the screen rotates between landscape and portrait orientation. So here this picture represents all the lifecycle callbacks of an activity. So when we launch an activity, first callback method is onCreate. When we start an activity, the Android system call the onCreate method. Soon after the onCreate method finishes your activity in started state, then the system call the onStart method. When the onStart method finishes execution, the system called the onResume method. When the onResume method finish your activity in resumed state, that means your activity is now ready to interact with the user. Your activity is in foreground, and your activity stay in resumed state until something interrupt it. For example, if another activity come into foreground, that means for example, if a phone call is arrived, it is another activity, so another activity will come in foreground. In such situation, the Android system first call the onPause method, and if your activity is partially visible to the user, your activity continue on the pause state, and if the user return back to the activity again, then the system again call the onResume method and your activity start interact with the user. Suppose if the activity is completely invisible to the user, in such case the system call the onStop method. So even after the onStop method execution finishes, an instance of that particular activity is still available in the memory. So if the user again come back to the activity again after onStop, the system call the onRestart method, and after finishing the onRestart, the system call the onStart, then onResume, and the activity come to the foreground. So after finishing onStop, if app with the higher priority need memory, that means if the system need more memory, the Android system kill the process in which your activity running. In that case, if the user again come back to the activity, the system again call the onCreate method. So the onCreate method is called only once throughout the life cycle of an activity, and after finishing onStop, if the activity is finishing or being destroyed by the system, that means if the user call the finish method or it is destroyed by the system, in that case the Android system call the onDestroy method. In that situation, the instance of the activity is completely removed from the memory, that means the activity in shutdown state. So this is the life cycle of an activity. So now we can learn about what are the life cycle callbacks of an activity. The first method is onCreate. You must implement this method which fire when the system first create the activity. In the onCreate method, you can perform basic application startup logic that should happen only once for the entire life of the activity. This method receives the parameter saved instant state, which is a bundle object containing the activity's previously saved state. Here is an example of onCreate method. And every activity lifecycle callback, you must implement the parent class implementation of that method. So here our method is onCreate. This is the only method you must implement within your activity. So here is the superclass implementation of the onCreate, and this is necessary for creating the activity and the view hierarchy. And here we specify the layout for the activity by calling this method called the setContentView. In that method, you have to pass the layouts parameter for the activity. And here you can initialize any member variable. So here we have a text view variable. You can initialize any possible member variable from the onCreate method. The onCreate method is invoked only once throughout the life cycle of an activity. Now the second method is onStart. After onCreate method finishes execution, the activity enters into a starter state. When the activity enters the starter state, the system invokes onStart callback. The onStart call makes the activity visible to the user as the app prepares for the activity to enter the foreground and become interactive. For example, this method is where the app initializes the code that maintains the user interface. When this method, within this method, you can register a broadcast receiver that monitors changes that are reflected in the user interface. The third method is onResume method. Soon after onStart finishes, the system invokes the onResume callback method and the activity enters into resumed state. This is the state in which the app interacts with the user. The app stays in this state until something happens to take focus away from the app, such as receiving a phone call, the user navigates to another activity, or the device screen is turning off. When an interruptive event occurs, the activity enters the paused state and the system invokes the onPause callback. If the activity returns to the resumed state from the paused state, the system once again calls the onResume method. You can use this method to initialize components that you release during onPause callback. Here is an example of that one. Here is the onResume method. So you must always call the superclass method first. Then here we initialize a camera object. So here we call a local method that handles the camera. So you can initialize any variables or any methods within this method that you must release from the onPause method. Now the fourth method is onPause. The system calls this method when the user leaves your activity. Use the onPause method to pause operations such as animations and music playback that should not continue while the activity is in the paused state. You can use the onPause method to release system resources such as broadcast receivers, handled to sensors like GPS, or any other resources that may affect battery life while your activity is paused and the user do not need them. For example, if your application uses the camera, the onPause method is a good place to release it. Here is an example. So here also you have to call the superclass implementation of that method, and here we initialize the camera from the onResume method, and we here within the onPause method we are going to release that method. If the camera object is null, we call the release method and we set the camera object into null. The next method is onStop. When your activity is no longer visible to the user, it has entered the stopped state and the system invokes the onStop callback. The system may also call onStop when the activity has finished running and is about to terminate it. In the onStop method, the app should release almost all resources that aren't needed while the user is not using it. For example, if you registered a broadcast receiver in OnStart to listen for changes that might affect your UI, then you can unregister the broadcast receiver within the onStop method. And the final method is onDestroy. This method is called before the activity is destroyed. This is the final call that the activity receives. The system either invokes this callback because the activity is finishing due to someone calling finish, or because the system is temporarily destroying the process containing the activity to save space. The onDestroy callback releases all the resources that have not yet been released by earlier callbacks such as onStop. I hope you understand the concepts of activity lifecycle callbacks. For getting more Android tutorial updates, please subscribe this channel now. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode.